Hello, I'm Sifu Kuttel, and in this video I want to introduce you to a sword made by Chen. Now, this sword has become my favorite and exclusive Taiji sword. This is the Grand Marshal Jian. This is the Grand Marshal Jian by Chen. It is a one-to-one high-fidelity reproduction of an existing antique from the 17th century in the Ming Dynasty. It has a very distinguished and elegant design, with bright brass fittings that complement the bright steel of the sword and brown amber hues of the lapocha wood scabbard. At first glance, this sword appears very sleek and actually somewhat modest, with no intricate engravings or embellishments, just brass, wood, and steel. But when we take a closer look at the fittings, we find that there's just a chock-full amount of symbolism in this sword. One of the most prominent themes we see on the sword is the gourd leaf shape, from the pommel to the wrapped brass on the scabbard fittings, and even the cutouts in between. In Taoist symbolism, the gourd is a symbol of wealth, abundance, and prosperity. The guard of the sword is a different shape, of the Lingzhi mushroom, which also represented health and longevity. Even today, the Lingzhi mushroom is considered a super mushroom and highly regarded for its medicinal properties. You may notice that both the guard and the pommel are quite large, especially when compared to other jian. Now, much of that is attributed to the symbolism, meaning bigger is better, yielding a stronger effect. Another reason is that this sword was made for a high-ranking general, hence the name Grand Marshal. In the Ming Dynasty, jian were actually not standard military issue for soldiers, so only higher-ranking officers would be carrying something like this. And when it's slung on the side, you can really see the handle, the guard, and the pommel. So this is prime real estate. And speaking of which, just like this pommel here that has a hole in it, it allows for even more decorations like a tassel and a bead to be passed through and to hang on it. But it's not all about looks. Just as much as this sword represents all of these symbols, it is very capable in combat. The Taoist symbolism of the gourd leaf and mushroom, to me, are extremely fitting for Taiji practice. Taiji has many Taoist principles and symbols woven into the art, and it is highly emphasized for its overall health benefits. However, just like this sword, it is very capable in combat if practiced correctly. But that's not the only reason that I find this to be an ideal sword for Taiji practice. More importantly, it's how this sword feels in motion when practicing sword forms and sword training. First off, the blade length is typical to a modern-day training jian at 29 inches, which means there will be no need for technique modification to avoid scraping the ground or awkward positioning to move around the blade. The guard is very smooth and comfortable and supports the extended finger position as well as the thumb and finger grip. Not only that, but the handle is slim and comfortable to hold. The added length keeps the pommel from tying up on the wrist or on the other hand when supporting the wrist. Next is the weight, which, yes, this is going to be heavier when compared to lightweight wooden training swords or the flexible steel that you find in most martial arts supply stores. So this does have some weight to it, and I don't value this so much for like the strength development and strength training, where more so it's for correct positioning, because you have to use your body efficiently, connect the right muscles, have correct alignment to move the sword, and you can't rely on weird articulations of the wrist and elbow, which over time could lead to long-term practice injury. Lastly, and to me, one of the most defining factors is balance. Because of the large pommel and guard, the point of balance is just above the guard, which makes for very smooth movement and tip control. You can really feel it when the jian is in motion. The sword just drives itself. All you have to do is guide it. This is especially important because of the slow movements and posture holds in Tai Chi, so you don't have to struggle just to hold and maintain a posture or position. Each of these elements, the length, the weight, and balance, have made, in my eyes, this sword the optimal sword for Tai Chi training. if you want to train with something that's historically accurate and something that the Taiji past masters would have been using. Now there's something that I should point out. If you haven't noticed it already, the tip of my sword is rounded. Now this was not uncommon during the Ming Dynasty, and in fact this is how the original antique sword is constructed. So I opted for this one, but this shouldn't determine your decision whether to get the sword or not, because this is an option. You can get a regular pointed tip on your sword. I just chose this one because this is more true to the original design, and I thought it was very unique for this sword. It is important to know exactly what you're going to be using this sword for, because it is available with both a sharpened and unsharpened blade. Now, a sharpened blade goes from the guard all the way to the tip of the sword. So it makes it very good for cutting, especially with the thin profile and the diamond-shaped cross-section. It's very efficient. If you are planning on using this sword for forms training and technique practice, then I suggest the non-sharpened option, especially if you're in a group setting, because it only takes one mistake, and it doesn't even have to be your mistake. The Grand Marshal Jian makes a statement, yet it doesn't boast. The tasteful designs of the gourd leaves and mushrooms in brass complements the deep tones of the handle and scabbard, and it makes this sword as beautiful to use as it does on display. I'll leave more information about this sword in the description down below, and as well as a link to LK Chen's website with this listing, so you can order this sword for yourself. Now, I can't recommend this enough. Like I said, this has become my exclusive Tai Chi training sword, and it really comes down to how this works in motion, and it's an added bonus that the Taoist elements of this match the Taoist elements in Tai Chi. But as always, I'm interested to hear about how you guys feel about this sword, so if you have this Jian by LK Chen, go ahead and let me know down below and tell me your observations about this sword in motion and in use. Otherwise, you can check out this sword in action in a number of videos that I have. You can learn Tai Chi Jian techniques here on YouTube, just check my playlist, as well as on my website if you want to learn traditional Yang style Tai Chi. I have an online learning program, and you can do that there. We go over hand forms, weapon forms like fan, jian, double fan, and double jian, and so on. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you in the next.